Let's remain standing and observe the moment of silence. Thank you. Sit down. There are few announcements. Members, you are reminded that you should really submit all the declaration forms, and the cutoff date, it is the 21st of March this year. So you can also request the one-on-one with the Integrity Commissioner. We don't have any MEC statements in terms of Rule 79.1. Now, regarding the member statement, there are two. One, I'll give to Honorable Bloom. You're not audible, Honorable Bloom. Let's.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. You have just reminded us that we are required to submit our declaration of interests every year, but this House needs to reflect on the poor example in this regard of a former Premier of this province. According to the third report of the Zondo Commission, there is evidence to support the prosecution of Nomvula Mokonyane for contravening anti-corruption as legislation as she received money and gifts from Bosasa. This included a monthly payment of 50,000 Rand, and every Christmas she got whiskies, wines and bright packs. I've checked all her declaration forms and none of this appears there. There would really be no need to do lifestyle audits of MECs if you could trust them to honestly declare all their interests to the legislature. This has obviously not happened, including with former Health MEC Brian Hlongwa. I do hope that these poor examples are not followed and that all members diligently declare their interests as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bloom. Can I get Member Honorable Engelbrecht? Can you assist her to switch the mic on? There you are.
Chair, can I just have a minute just to find it, please?
While she's busy, let me just get to apologies. We have a standing apology from the Speaker who's outside the country. And again, we have the apology for the Deputy Speaker who is not feeling well today. And then also the apology of the Chair of Committees, Stark and Traffic will be arriving. And again, we have the apology of Honorable Solim Simanga and then also Honorable Fred Nell, who are attending a party businesses. And then again, we have the apology of the MEC Mazibuko, due to family bereavement. The news broke yesterday that her daughter passed on. May her soul rest in peace. Honorable Engelbrecht.
Chair, thank you. In terms, the DA calls on the MEC for Community Safety to take immediate and decisive action against the rogue driving schools blocking access to driver license testing centres in Gauteng. A court order was obtained against the National Driving School Association of South Africa on the 2nd of March by the RTMC and the Gauteng Department of Roads and Transport. In terms of the court order, the National Department of Driving Schools of South Africa is interdicted from protesting within 150 meters from the driving training schools and may not disrupt the operations of the driving licenses in Gauteng. It is the right of each citizen to obtain their licenses, and it is government's role to ensure that each citizen is provided an environment conducive to receive their licenses. The safety of customers and workers in these centres is paramount. The DA wishes to express its sincere apologies to all customers who have been inconvenienced. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Today we've got only 2 items. These are not orders. Only 2 items. The first item will be the introduction of the Gauteng Provincial Appropriate Bill, that we are going to deal with it in terms of Rule 219, which read with Rule 220. And the second item for the day will be the introduction of the Gauteng Provincial Second Adjustment Appropriation Bill. Those are the 2 items of the day. And for now, let me take up this opportunity and invite the read it. Yes, these are items. And then the first one, I'll just give it to the secretary to properly process, and then we dispense with the first item. Secretary.
First order is introduction of the Gauteng Provincial Appropriation Bill G001 for 2022 for the financial year of 2022-2023.
Now let me call upon the MEC Nkomora Lewoko to introduce the Gauteng Provincial Appropriation Bill. MEC.
Morning, Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson of Committees, Madam Speaker, Honorable Premier, colleagues in the Executive, Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable members of this House, mayors and MMCs. I know Minister and Deputy Minister of Finance are listening, and HODs of our departments, CEOs and other public entities, private sector representatives, comrades and friends, people of Gauteng, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all, the people of our beloved province of Gauteng. Let me take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt welcome to everyone physically present in this August House and those who are virtually in attendance from the 4 quadrants of our province. Deputy Chairperson of Committees, to capture the essence of this budget and its time in the period of this government, I must just start here by quoting from an outstanding author, Henry David Thoreau. I will open quote, "All endeavors calls for the ability to trump the last mile, shape the last plan, endure the last hour's toil. The fight to finish spirit is the one characteristic we must possess if we are to face the future as finishers," close quote. I'm truly humbled one more time that history and fate have chanced me with the unique opportunity to present in this esteemed House the 2022-23 Gauteng Provincial Government budget. Honorable members, the budget we are tabling in this House today comes a few months after we reached the halfway mark in November 2021. Of the 6th administration under Premier David Makhura. This means that we have now entered the consolidation phase towards walking the last mile of the journey we began in 2019. The 2022 medium-term expenditure framework budget will be taking the province to the end of the 6th administration, and accordingly, the emphasis is on consolidation and delivery of Growing Gauteng Together 2030 plan interventions to realize the goal of building the Gauteng city region despite stresses and strains caused by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps it may be premature to conclusively measure progress or lack thereof since the start of this administration, but it is worth paraphrasing the profound words of President Mandela in trying to locate or amplifying a significant of half-mile transverse and another completing mile to the finishing line in 2024. In Matiba's words, I will open quote again, "We must constrain by and yet regardless of the accumulated effect of our historical burden, seize the time to define ourselves and what we want to make our shared destiny," close quote. The dividing miles between the start and the finish line may be an expedient, but still confirms the correctness and appropriateness of our government's sustained policy consistency, spirit of our people, and cultural levels. Deputy Chair of Committees, the global public health emergency sparked by COVID-19 pandemic that began in 2020 may have derailed our original plans, but never deterred our conviction and the resilience of the people of Gauteng to still work and salvage what was possible when economies all over the world were closing down. It is the policy consistency that is anchored in our vision of Growing Gauteng Together 2030, which, notwithstanding the loss of lives and the attendant devastation of livelihoods brought by COVID-19, that we can at least still talk to our economy on a rebuilding phase. In the same breath, our plans had to reflect the pressures of the time, with tweaking and adaptation to respond to the global pandemic. But the end of state, which is the vision which has always been the same and remains, which is that of the economy, jobs and infrastructure, which are core to reignite the Gauteng province. Education, skills revolution and health, to focus on recalibrating social policy to improve educational and health outcomes. Integrated human settlement and land release. Safety, social cohesion and food security, as well as building a capable, ethical and developmental state to include measures aimed at improving governance across the Gauteng city region. Premier Makura said when presenting the State of the Province address 2 weeks ago, I will open quotes, "We must shift our focus and energies to tackle unemployment through economic recovery and reconstruction. After so much death and destruction of lives and livelihoods, it is time to rebuild and to do so with the greatest sense of agency, single-mindedness and coordination demonstrated during our emergency response to COVID-19, close quotes. Indeed, Premier Makura's words reflect the real-life daily concerns of our people who have endured hardship. Their hopes, their dreams and aspirations are captured in the words of Mr. Tapelo Mashabelo, whom we met at the Sebokeng Youth Expo last month, and he said, open quote, "I want to see more public funds being directed towards teaching high school learners more about the role of technology in economic growth. If young people learn that they have the ability to contribute to technological improvement, then we will have more sustainable business in our township," close quote. The 2022 MTF budget is the culmination of a protracted planning process, both at the national and provincial level, as well as the deliberations of Gauteng Government Executive Council, which identified a number of interventions that were necessary to bring the implementation of the GGT 2030 back on track, including the establishment of functional war rooms on good governance, fighting corruption, on jobs and the economy, on poverty and food security, on crime and infrastructure delivery, war on youth socio-economic development, all of which will require resourcing from existing allocations. Furthermore, this budget makes provision to support the mainstream of government's programs that focus on gender-based violence and support of the rights of women, rights of youth, senior citizens, people with disability, military veterans, and the LGBTIQ+ community. It also includes the amounts allocated to address femicide, gender-based violence, as well as violence against women and children. We remain focused on creating a people-centered society in which millions of our people could celebrate the gains of freedom every day. In his work, A Way of Being Free, the Nigerian novelist and the poem Ben Onkri said this about the meaning of freedom. Open quote, "They will tell me that the nature is survival of the fittest, and yet look at how many wadrons, gold and yellow fishes prosper amongst the silent stones of the ocean beds, while sharks eternally prowl the waters in their impossible dreams of oceanic domination, and while whales become extinct, look how many antelopes, ants, flies, birds, and aquamarine plumage, birds and that have mastered Shunia Achebe's art of flying without pitching. How many butterflies and iguanas thrive, while elephants turn into endangered species, and while even lions growl in their dwindling solitude. Nature and history are not about survival of the fittest, but also about survival of the wisest, the most adaptive, and the most aware," close quote. Deputy Chair of committees, the fate of our future rests on our ability to, as former President Nelson Mandela said, open quote again, "define for ourselves what we want to make our own shared destiny," close quote. The fight to the finished spirit is not based on the sectoral, partisan, or populist postures, but out of collective character that we all must possess if we are to face the future as strong finishers. This budget and associated allocation are nothing but a clear manifestation of the brisk movements we intend to complete in our journey to 2024. Honourable members, the International Monetary Fund expects the recovery global economy to continue with gross domestic product growth moderating an estimated of 4.4% in 2022 from 5.9% in 2021. Although this growth was revised down by 0.6%, advanced economies are projected to return to their pre-pandemic levels this year. But the recovery is still to remain uneven because of COVID-19 vaccination rates of different countries. Countries with higher vaccination rates are expected to open more sectors of the economy quicker and longer than those with low vaccination rates. Tabling his national budget to Parliament recently, Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Kotongwana, said the country's economic growth for 2021 is expected to level at 4.8% in 2021, down from 5.1% estimates announced during the mid-term budget policy statement in November last year. South Africa yesterday released the fourth quarter growth of rate for South Africa, which stands at 4.9%. In Gauteng, which contributes more than 35% to South Africa's gross domestic product, the provincial economy grew by 7.4% in the first half of 2021, compared to the same period last year. The higher than anticipated recovery in the first half of the year was because of the supportive global growth, higher commodity prices, and the easing of COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. Gauteng's economy is projected to grow by 4.9% in 2021 from a revised -6% in 2020, before moderating to 2.2% in 2022 and 2.1% in 2023. However, overall, the provincial economy is still about 1% smaller than it was in 2019. Gauteng is a service-based economy that is mainly dependent on the tertiary sector. Industries such as agriculture, finance, government services are expected to recover significantly in 2021 compared to 2019. Honourable members, we are tabling the 2022 MTF budget within a very tight fiscal environment, characterized by economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the negative impact of the July 2021 unrest on the economy, and resultant negative investor confidence, and the ever-increasing levels of unemployment. As such, this budget is underpinned by the following key principles. The first one is resourcing the provincial priorities of winning the battle against COVID-19 pandemic. The second one is reigniting the economy and recalibrating social policy to improve educational and health outcomes. Reprioritizing to the budget to resource GTG 2030 priorities and the COVID-19 response plan. shifting and funding from consumption investment and strategic economic infrastructure to support government's reconstruction and recovery efforts, readiness of departments to implement and capacity to deliver the projects. The funding that the Gauteng Provincial Government will receive from the national government in 2022-2023 financial year in the form of the provincial equitable share and conditional grants amount to 146 billion, which increases to 248 billion in 2024-25, which is our outer year of the MTF. During the same period, the total provincial own revenue collection from, amongst other things, which is gambling taxes, hospital patient fees, interest earned, and motor vehicle licenses, will increase from 7.2 billion in the 2022-2023 financial year to 8 billion in the 2024-25 financial year. In a bid to enhance our own revenue in the province to supplement declining national transfers, Gauteng Provincial Government, under the leadership of the Gauteng Province, under the leadership of Gauteng Provincial Treasury, developed a revenue enhancement strategy which is anchored around two pillars. The first one is optimization of current revenue sources and exploring new revenue streams, such as online renewal of motor vehicle licenses, roadside advertising, Gauteng broadband network commercialization, and automation of casino license operations. Honorable members, this budget comprises of 153 billion allocated for 2022-23 financial year, 152 billion for 23-24 financial year, and 156 billion for the outer year, which is 24-25 financial year. Therefore, the total budget that we are allocating to provincial departments over the 2022 MTF amounts to 462.7 billion. I must emphasize that the funding of the GGT 2030 priorities has been carried through in the 2022 MTF period. This means that the total new money will be added to the baselines of provincial departments' budget over the next 3 years and will be just over 15 billion. The social sector, comprising of health, education, social development, accounting to the largest share as we continue with our efforts to address the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Honorable members, the role of infrastructure in economic growth and development is well acknowledged in the National Development Plan of 2030. The construction of industry can play an important role in South Africa and Gauteng economy in terms of providing or maintaining infrastructure that is fundamental to the development of the country, especially in terms of projects related to transport, water and energy, and creating jobs for low-skilled persons. Investing in schools, healthcare facilities, libraries, social development facilities, and sports facilities provides the enabling environment required to deliver government services to communities. In these types of facilities that are not well planned and not maintained, they place an additional drain on the economy. The same in the case where public infrastructure is developed with substantial cost and turnover runs, as well as not meeting quality standards. Over the 2022 MTF, a budget of 36.8 billion has been recommended for the GPG infrastructure program to improve the condition and capacity of the existing stock of infrastructure assets, of which 12.2 billion is allocated for 2022-23 financial year, and 12.3 billion for 2023-24 financial year, and 12.3 billion for 24-25 financial year. Highlights of the projects to be funded under the auspices of infrastructure program over 2022 MTF are the following. The first one, under roads and transport, is upgrading of road K101 phase 1 from N1 Royeisgral interchange to road T75 Olifantsfontein Road in Midrand. Upgrading R82 phase 3 between road D1073 Walkerville and K164 Didier, and construction of new road K60 between Megawatt Park, which is Maxwell Drive, and Kyalami Drive. Under health, refurbishment of hospitals, which is Dr. Yusuf Dadu, Eden Vale, Jubilee Hospital, Kopanong Hospital, Liratong Hospital, and Krizani Parakwanat Academic Hospital. Under human settlement is the construction of housing units, servicing of stands, Impumelelo Extension, Phase 4, Extension 4, Phase 1, Green Hills, Extension 12, Afri Village, Clayville, Extension 71, and Den Klume. Under education is construction of new schools at Rasterval Secondary School, Bram Fisher Primary School, Dr. W.K. Duplessis School for learners with special education needs, and E.W. Hobbs Primary School. Under Kopanong Precinct, which falls under the DID, is the procurement process for Kopanong Precinct, which is at the final stage of appointing the preferred bidders. Gauteng SEZ Developments, which is the Gauteng, falls under economic development. The Gauteng Infrastructure Financing Agency will identify and prepare relevant infrastructure projects within the Gauteng SEZs that require funding from the private sector. Other key projects funded in the infrastructure allocation include the maintenance of existing health facilities and occupational health and safety and refurbishment of the program. The Gauteng Provincial Government invests substantial infrastructure to respond to service delivery needs. This investment over many years multiplied generations and has resulted in a huge property portfolio that includes infrastructure that is not only critical in the delivery of services such as education and health, but also enables economic development and growth. Available funds are increasingly becoming scarcer and should be protected in the same manner that a person would look after his or her own funds. Unnecessary mistakes throughout the delivery chain of infrastructure should not be normal way of doing business without consequences. Underspending remains a challenge. In Gauteng, the province introduced the concept of first preparing a business case as a minimum requirement for infrastructure projects that are funded from the equitable share to ensure that the key strategic planning issues, cost estimates, risk, and related matters are given adequate consideration before allocating funding to a project. The recent Budget Council took a decision to review the conditional grants ecosystem. The grant framework is prepared by the national department responsible for administering the grant to guide provinces and municipalities in planning for its implementation. The national departments are required to ensure that all the planning requirements for the grant are completed before the financial year begins to avoid delays to the start of the implementation of the programs. As part of proposed review, we will need to focus on management and efficiency in the grant ecosystem to address, amongst other things, the problem of underspending in infrastructure projects that are funded from the conditional grants. To demonstrate the seriousness of using infrastructure as a means to address economic recovery, we will have to take a very bold course of action, including but not limited to the following. The first one, increasing productivity, increasing efficiency, and willingness in the public sector to accept the responsibility to implement projects on time, budget, and meeting the quality standards. The second one is allowing adequate time for credible planning, not rushing projects or constantly changing priorities or continuous changing of scopes. The third one is compensation events should only be due to 100% unforeseen reasons. And the last one is strict and accountably adherence to the preparations of business cases, their review for funding requests and monitoring of projects against business cases for continued funding allocation through planning, procurement, and implementation. As the Gauteng Provincial Government, we are entrusted with the accumulated wealth of infrastructure and have a moral obligation to maintain its value and productive capacity. Destruction of public infrastructure can no longer be accepted, and if a school is vandalized or a public road is damaged, there should be swift and very stringent measures taken against the responsible individuals. Our infrastructure consists of multi-generational assets that must be maintained to achieve their expected useful life. It is therefore essential that a portfolio of size and accumulated over a long duration of time produces an optimum return in infrastructure longevity and is fit for the purpose for which it will be developed over the long term. In fulfilling the legal mandate or oversight role of the Gauteng Provincial Treasury is to promote and enforce effective management of infrastructure, and we have become increasingly concerned about the way the maintenance of provincial infrastructure is being planned and executed. We do not see the investment in infrastructure maintenance yielding the desired results and impact. It is crucial that our infrastructure is adequately maintained at regular intervals to ensure that they are fit for the purpose. This requires that the maintenance be planned and performed regularly and promptly by competent and qualified persons to ensure quality and to minimize potential health and safety risks. The Gauteng Provincial Department of Education has embarked on a demonstration project whereby a facility management approach is followed to ensure that the optimum operation and maintenance of public schools. Each public school is viewed as a facility that functions as one complex comprising of many assets that represent a single management unit for financial, operational, maintenance, and other purposes. Facility management will therefore become an enabler for sustaining the performance of the assets throughout the life cycle of the assets and also provide supportive business processes. The aim is to bring all public schools to a uniform standard of maintenance following standardized methodologies and steps. A uniform standards has been developed and maintenance on the activities will be implemented based on a condition, risk-based and prioritization approach. Funding has been provided for this demonstration project, and the lessons learned will be shared with other provincial government departments. If this approach produces desired results and produces value for money, Gauteng Provincial Treasury would encourage other departments through the relevant implementing agent to consider following a similar approach. In the wake of the last local government elections, we acknowledge that the people of our province have spoken. We recognize that our municipal governance landscape has changed, and I reiterated to the new municipal leadership that although our political ideologies and standpoints differ, we have one common purpose, which is to see local government succeeding and fulfilling its obligation as envisaged in our constitution. We place great emphasis on intergovernmental relations to ensure local government is fiscal prudent, self-sustainable, and empowered to promoting clean, ethical, and sound municipal financial governance in the province. The MEC and MMC Finance Forum is a key instrument in driving this governance agenda. And already we have a group of SCM practitioners that has graduated last month at the local government, and we're taking the second group now that is going to school again because we want in all the municipalities to deploy SCM practitioners who qualify for the positions that they are holding. The Gauteng Provincial Government is again currently engaged in a recruitment drive to fill critical posts in line with the newly approved organizational structure, which includes the Municipal Financial Management Support Unit, to further strengthen the intervention and support functions provided to municipalities in dire financial and service delivery distress. Other areas we intend unlocking are long-term municipal finance planning and strengthening municipal finance policy. Municipal revenue protection and sufficient inflow is foremost for municipalities, but everyone has a part to play. Rather, as the Gauteng Provincial Government, we remain committed to the settlement of municipal debt. The Debt Management Committee has been instrumental in driving and achieving this. Yes, more can be done, but we appreciate the IGR cohesiveness and streamlined processes this structure has been able to put in place. Honourable members, in 2022-2023 financial year, a total of 3 billion has been allocated to Gauteng Provincial Government departments to offset the public wage settlement that was previously not budgeted for. This is a once-off amount, and it must be borne in mind that the wage negotiation process is underway and expected to conclude in the course of 2022-23 financial year. The resourcing of this will be communicated to all departments upon conclusion of the process. As a province, we have managed to contain the wage bill at below 60% of the provincial budget, and largely avoiding crowding out resources from other areas which would hinder the attainment of our GDT 2030 ideas. Honourable members, the additional resources being tabled today are themed along the following. The first one, winning the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. Second one, reigniting the economy and recalibrating social policy to improve education, health, and other outcomes. We all heard Honourable Premier's clarion call in the SOPA that all hands will be on deck as we move from the public health emergency to economic and service delivery emergency. In reigniting the economy, a total of 1.3 billion is being allocated over the 2022 MTF. The SOPA dwelt extensively on the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone and other special economic zones in the Gauteng City region, and the agency required in dealing with the economic challenges that need to be surmounted in recovering from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the sluggish economic growth that has been experienced over the past few years. Over the 2022 MTF period, a total of 638 million has been allocated towards Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone to address the internal bulk infrastructure that is necessary to bring the fruition to second and other phases of this project, as well as to support the operation expenditure shortfall in the intervening period before occupation by tenants whose rental cost shall offset the operational funding requirements. The Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development will be receiving an additional once-off amount of 10 million, which will assist the department to undertake feasibility studies in the thematic areas of climate change, horticultural production hub, egg aggregation pack station, and starch manufacturing facility. The latter three having been identified as crucial in developing business cases that will be crucial in obtaining private sector funding from these projects. This is in line with the drive to enhance value add in the agricultural sector and catalyze agro-processing as outlined in the SOPA, where Honourable Premier highlighted the work being done in conjunction with the beverage, agro-processing, agribusiness sectors, and not only ensure food security, but promote urban agriculture as a key factor for employment and economic growth and development. Honourable members, Honourable Premier in 2 weeks emphasized that our agenda of revising apartheid spatial transformation remains on track, and the continued issuance of title deeds would be key in providing security of tenure. Given the backlog in the issuance of title deeds over the 2022 MTF, in addition to the resources already in the baseline of the Gauteng Department of Human Settlement, an additional of 177 million has been allocated to ensure that by 2024, the backlog is cleared and new title deeds are issued to beneficiaries of housing projects. SOPA dwelt at length on the crisis of youth unemployment and the various initiatives that have over the years been initiated in response to the emergency on social conditions that young people continue to be faced with. Indeed, while work opportunities have been created since 2014, we saw the increased emphasis on expanded public works programs. This is not only enough to make dent in the catastrophic unemployment rate, especially among young people in the province. While many initiatives are embedded in the existing baseline targeting the youth, such as procurement from youth-owned enterprises, where 5.6 billion was spent between 2014 and 2019, as well as supplier development training, this budget has set aside a total of 2.4 billion for the following youth-centered opportunities. Youth Brigade, which is under the Department of Education, will be receiving an additional amount of 376 million over the 2022 MTF to employ youth as part of Youth Brigade and ensure that they placed and employed in critical service areas of the department like bus conductors. It is expected that the department collaborate with the Gauteng Department of Social Development to target young people who are already profiled. Our intention is to reduce the grant dependency of unemployed graduates by hiring them in various service points in schools and in districts. This will be linked with the Premier's policy imperative of implementing the Provincial Welfare to Work program towards reigniting the provincial economy and recalibrating the social compact. The Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, which the national government has provided 2.2 billion for the 22-23 and 23-24 financial years for mass public employment intervention. That is focusing on skilling the youth and the schools used as the channel by which the youth can access skills. These resources allocated to the Gauteng Department of Education should see more than 40,000 unemployed young people hired to assist in the implementation of various education sector youth employment programs like teacher assistance and administrative assistance. COVID-19 call center, an additional amount of 12.9 million has been allocated 2022-23 to keep the COVID-19 call center open as we are battling, as this battle against COVID-19 is not yet won. Patrollers, we are giving them an additional amount of 13 million that has been made available to Gauteng Department of Community Safety to hire more patrollers in an attempt to fight crime in the province. As a result of this additional funding, approximately 400 patrollers will be added to the streets of Gauteng province. The Gauteng e-waste management strategy was recently approved, and it outlines how electrical and electronic equipment will be disposed of and managed, reaching their end of life. Not only does this strategy protect the environment from further degradation, but it also creates job opportunities, particularly for women, people with disability, and the youth. And 6 million will be used to actualize this strategy. The utilization of these resources towards their intended objectives will be our ongoing preoccupation. There will be heightened partnership with the private sector under the auspices of economic recovery and jobs war room so that the desired outcomes and impacts are achieved. Under the Gauteng Department of Health, which is at the forefront and leading the quest to win the battle against COVID-19 pandemic, the province has significant decline in the positive cases as well as the drop in the rates of hospitalization. In the light of the resource constraints facing the health sector as a whole, a total of 3.4 billion has been made available to the Department of Health over the 2022 MTF, consisting of 1.6 billion in the 2022-23 and 738 million in 2023-24 and 1 billion in 24-25. While acknowledging that the pandemic is still in our midst, our response is driven by scientific evidence. Accordingly, in the 2022-23 financial year, it is expected that this additional amount will largely go towards resourcing the Gauteng COVID-19 response plan, together with offsetting other budgetary pressures. In order to ensure that the Gauteng Provincial Government continues to have capacity to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, a once-off amount of 1.1 billion will enable Gauteng Department of Health to maintain some of the existing human resource capacity for the duration of 2022-23 financial year. To address the risk of employees and patients, matters of occupational health and safety will be resourced, while additional funding of 119.7 million over 2022 MTF being made available towards the employment of OHS practitioners. These funds are specifically allocated towards protecting and promoting workers' health, to sustain and improve their working capacity and ability, to contribute to the establishment and maintenance of a safe and healthy working environment, through the prevention of infection among health sector staff and community through provision of training on effective use of PPE, development of guidelines and monitoring of performance, identification, assessment, implementation of controls and monitoring of workers exposed to hazards and risk, to prevent occupation injuries, diseases and ensure continuous medical surveillance, and management of compensation for occupation injuries and diseases, routine and vaccine-related, with multi-year backlogs and management of 29 occupational health and wellness centers and additional 8 established in the district level. There is also funding allocated towards goods and services, in particular, consumable supplies and medical supplies, which items are at the core of healthcare, and which will ensure that the department is able to provide adequate healthcare. In recalibrating the social impact compact to improve health, education and other outcomes, a total of 8.1 billion will be allocated towards various aspects. Indeed, as the Honourable Premier emphasized in the SOPA, additional outcomes have been a key area of pride, with significant resource invested in the modernization and quality delivery of education, especially improving educational outcomes in the township schools. Building on this past success over the 2022 MTF, the Gauteng Department of Education will be receiving a total of 5.2 billion allocated towards personal protective equipment in public schools. 817.8 million has been allocated to enable GDE to provide the personal protective equipment in public schools. This funding will aid in abating the spread of virus in public schools and protect both learners and educators. Gauteng has about 2,210 public schools, with more than 2.6 million learners, which represents a large community in our province. Priority for this intervention will, however, mainly be towards those poorer and most vulnerable public schools within the quintiles 1 and 3 and quintiles 4 and 5 categories, respectively. Under recapitalization of township technical schools, the importance of market-related technical skills has become more important, particularly in the previous disadvantaged townships. Funding is made specifically available for recapitalization of these technical schools to enable them to offer market-related curriculum that is aligned with the fourth industrial revolution. An amount of 157 million has been allocated over the 3 years towards the recapitalization of township technical schools to revive these schools so that they are able to offer technical and engineering programs. These will boost the skills that are high demand and respond to the changing world of technology and the 4IR industrial revolution. Ict Investment, we have funds that are allocated for the continuation and upscaling of the Gauteng e-learning strategy, which is a provincial policy priority that will further push ahead the province in leading the country in the use of technology in teaching and learning. Gauteng shall continue to be the national benchmark in as far as technology-based learning is concerned. To this effect, 1.2 billion has been allocated over the MTF for increasing the number of devices, data, and the security. Under personal funding, the COVID-19 pandemic has left a void that will need additional human resource to be employed to replace those who have been lost to the pandemic, and also to provide additional growth posts as a result of the increase in the learner numbers in the province. Over the 2022 MTF, an additional 2.2 billion has been made available to ensure that GDE is able to hire and replace educators post-COVID-19 to ensure that the challenges of loss of capacity is restored and educators are appointed to continue classroom-based teaching and learning. The Gauteng Department of Social Development will be receiving 476 million over 2022 MTF. These resources are specifically for the following areas: Gauteng City Region Audit All Adult Homeless Strategy, which is COVID-19 brought to the fore the need of government to improve care towards protection of the rights of human dignity to the homeless in our communities. It is government's responsibility to care and provide community-specific and relevant programs to all its citizens without any discrimination. So an amount of 263 million is allocated to continue the implementation of this strategy in collaboration with municipalities and the Gauteng Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. And about 2,420 beneficiaries across the regions of the province are targeted, where the Gauteng Department of Social Development will, based on lessons from hard lockdown, continue to implement and monitor long-term strategy for shelters. The department will also conduct comprehensive profiling of willing beneficiaries and attach them to particular shelters where various skills will be provided to enable them to improve their economic opportunities and income-generating programs. It is also envisaged that the department will provide services that will be focused on substance abuse, dysfunctional families, mental and physical health, and those in conflict with the law. Support to the non-governmental organization sector, because as a caring government, additional funding to this tune of 212.5 million over 3 years has been added to augment the existing allocation in the Gauteng Department of Social Development. The budget in the social development sector will focus on those NGOs that I've just indicated. This funding is meant to ensure that sustainable and of the relations and collaboration between government and NGO sector, which is an extended arm of government. Honorable members, Premier David Makura, in the SOPA statement, he reiterated that we need to expand our interventions in poverty alleviation programs. These will specifically be prioritized towards the following: increasing the provision of food parcels by increasing and reach 2 million food insecure and vulnerable people, 100,000 young people, especially women, by transitioning them from welfare into decent employment with skills and further educational opportunities. Launching the urban agriculture and food movement for township to grow their food. Expanding the coverage of learners who miss school due to lack of dignity perks. Expansion of other welfare services like substance abuse, care to children and the aged and those affected and living with HIV and AIDS. With the Department of Community Safety being in the forefront of this, we will ensure that Gauteng citizens are safe, The department will be receiving a total of 233 million in order to implement the 24/7 model of traffic policing in Gauteng Province from the 1st of April 2022 as resolved by the Executive Council. A further 125 million has been made to assist the department with the cost of fleet services in the light of substantial increase in the number of traffic officers, as the department has endeavored to reduce road fatalities in the province. Honourable members, who are committed to promoting clean governance, transparency and public accountability. On the 6th of April 2022, the Constitutional Court handed out the judgment in the application for leave to appeal against a judgment and other order of Supreme Court of Appeal, in as far as the validity of preferential procurement regulations 2017 promulgated by the Minister of Finance in terms of a PPP Framework Act of number 5 of 2000. This application was brought by the Minister against Agribusiness NPC. The Supreme Court of Appeal held the Minister's promulgation of Regulation 3B, 4 and 9 of the Preferential Procurement Regulations was unlawful due to what the SCA held to be interconnectedness of the regulations. The entirety of the Preferential Procurement Regulations was declared invalid. The declaration of invalidity was suspended for 12 months. The majority of judgment of the Constitutional Court dismissed the appeal against the SCA judgment, but it was silent on the question of remedy as it did not address the issue of the SCA suspension. The Minister will, on an agent basis, seek confirmation from the Constitutional Court that the validity of the PP Regulations 2017 has been and continues to be suspended for a period of 12 months. Honourable members, it has been emphasized to the departments receiving these resources the need of total accountability in their utilization. Not only these monies will be earmarked by the Gauteng Provincial Treasury, they will be tracking expenditure with a view to report to the Executive Council on quarterly basis. Let me also echo the Honourable Premier's emphasis on ethical governance and the need to contribute and continue focus on promoting responsive, accountably effective and efficient public service and eliminating corruption. It will not bode well if scarce resources that are increasingly difficult to come by are diverted away from the needs of the marginalized segments of our society, who look up upon the government to support and sustenance towards the corrupt and self-enriching behavior. We owe it to ourselves to be guided by our ethical and moral compass in working for those in whose name we serve. Honourable members, we are sure of our success in this chosen path. The citizens of this province need inspiration and hope. Therefore, it is up to us to live their singular and collective expectations as we walk transverse the last mile of this administration. We dare not fail. At this point, let me recapture this moment well articulated 60 years ago in 1962 by Inkosi Albert Luthuli in his book, Let My People Go. I open quote, "The task is not finished. South Africa is not yet home for all her sons and daughters. Such a home we wish to ensure from the beginning of our history has been one of the ascending unities, the breaking of tribal, wrenched from the whole. There remains before us the building of a new land, from the reigns of the old narrow groups, a synthesis of rich cultural strains which we have inherited. The task is immense," close quote. Honourable members, let me take this opportunity to express my appreciation to Honourable Premier David Makura for his leadership and continued guidance and leadership as we continue to work to serve the people of Gauteng. Colleagues in the Executive and the Premier's Budget Council for your continuous cooperation and participation. Your valuable input is always appreciated in ensuring that our budget responds to the needs of the citizens. Thank you very much to the Finance Portfolio Committee and the Standing Committee on Public Accounts under the capable leadership of Honourable John Mpisi and Honourable Sokaile Kanyire, respectively, for their insight and oversight on all budget and financial management matters. Head of Department, Ms. Ngumi Samnyani, and the entire Treasury team for their hard work and dedication to efficient management of public funds. And last but not least, I want to thank my family for always being a source of great strength to me, especially my children, Anle and Tumelo, for their continued support in the work I do of serving the citizens of Gauteng. Honourable members, I present the following documents for consideration by the House: the Appropriation Bill of 2022, the explanatory memorandum of the bill, estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, estimates of capital expenditure, socio-economic review outlook, and a copy of my speech. I thank you, honourable members.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get to the next item. Thank you very much. While the MEC takes a breath, let me acknowledge stakeholders from Treasury, stakeholders from e-government. You are really welcomed at this, the auditorium. For now, I'm giving to the Secretary to read the next item.
Thank you. The next item is the introduction of the Gauteng Provincial Second Adjustments Appropriation Bill, G002 for 22 for the 2021 financial and 2022 financial year.
I now call upon the MEC to table the Gauteng Provincial Second Adjustment Appropriation Bill. MEC.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chair of Committees. I, Nomantu Nkomorali Huku, I introduce the Gauteng Provincial Adjustment Bill for 2021-2022 and lays them upon the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now this concludes our business for the day. And the next sitting will be next week, Tuesday, the 15th of March, starting at 10. For now, the House is adjourned.